Hey guys, good morning, good evening, wherever you're in the world. Today, as my post, I am going to make a bitter melon spring soup. And so let's talk through the logic of how to build this soup. So essentially, I was thinking, here's the reasoning about. Basically, I was thinking, all right, I'm not feeling very hot, very heaty. It's still spring, it's been raining, it's gonna rain these next few days. And so a spring soup, something that's a little more diuretic, so very damp, I feel it, it's humid, was riding on the weekend and we felt it's very humid, right? So the logic is that we're gonna get a soup that's more diuretic, it's gonna help dispel dampness first of all. And also I've been feeling very heaty, right? So my nose is a bit stuffed, there's probably still a cold remaining. So damp heat, essentially that's kind of what I'm feeling as a condition in the body. So starting with that logic, the idea is that, okay, let's go with something cooling. Traditionally in the spring, melons are your best bet. And the most cooling ingredient you can use for soups, winter melon being one of them, but the bitter gourd is the other one. I've not really tried bitter gourd as a full soup other than a quick boil. We're gonna try a long boil with this first. So that's the soup design. Melons tend to go with pork, right? That's the pairing. So knowing that I'm gonna do a melon soup, I'm gonna go with some pork. So I've gotten some pork shoulder bones here, but because I wanna offset the bitterness of the melon, I'm gonna add chicken as well to make it a little bit sweet, very slightly warming, but not too much. So if I'm thinking about, all right, I want my kids to drink this soup because bitter melon is actually really bitter, then I want to try to add a little more sweetness to the soup. What other vegetables are there? Corn is perfect. And I talked about corn silk last time. We're going to use that again. So corn is actually a great complement to melons. It will help sweeten the soup. Carrots will also do that. So I'm just going to add one large carrot. And the interesting one are beets. So beets actually are quite sweet as well. So this is going to be the vegetable pairing together. This is what I think through when I'm thinking soup design. All right, fine. So we go with the melons, the pork, then let's think about what the herb base is going to be. So normally, red dates, lawns, I'm gonna avoid some of those warmer herbs because it is a cooling diuretic soup. So a great one to add in terms of flavor that's actually not too warming is dried scallops. Dried scallops, dried shrimp, dried octopus, any type of dried seafood is really good to go with a cooler soup and pork. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is spring soups. I've talked about this last time. Spring soups are amazing with barley. So I don't have uncooked barley, so I'm gonna use fried barley, which is fine. Ooh, my green beans. So I do have mung beans, both green and yellow, which are amazing for spring soups. Again, I've used black-eyed beans before. You can use red beans, but any beans complement melons. So that's the pairing that I'm thinking today. What I thought of the soup for the soup design. The other one that's really yummy are dried shiitake mushrooms. So I will always have this in my pantry. So just keep a bunch in your pantry. Whenever you feel like you need to add a little more flavor, like that umami flavor, savory but a little sweet, these are your go-to ones. And so what I'm trying to do now essentially is, for the children, because I know they're not fans of bitter melon, is to try to mask some of the bitterness of the melon. So I'll show you what I'm gonna do also to help soften this bitterness. So let's start preparing this and I'll talk you through it. So that's the soup design, about when you're thinking about what to create for your soup and how to create it and how to pair the vegetables with the meat base and then how the herbs are gonna come together. So I'm actually gonna do a few posts about just thinking about soup design and what complements each other and why. So with bitter melon, this is what they look like. I bought 2 for the soup today, but I'm thinking that 2 might be too bitter. And bitter melons are actually quick boils. Usually they boil quite quickly. You don't have to boil them for very long. And so what I'm gonna do with this is try one first, taste it, and see how much of that bitterness has come out. And then if I do, I'll add another one. So if you want to reduce the bitterness of the melon, what you want to do first is actually soak it in water. So that's what I'm going to do first, to just try to relieve some of that bitterness. But actually, I'll tell you, the bitterness is what makes it cooling, right? The bitterness is the powerful piece about that. So what I'm going to do is, if I'm going to soak the bitter melon, what I'm going to do is actually just soak my mushrooms as well. So just drop this in water like this. I've just got a pot of water here. right here. Just drop that in, soak that for a bit. So that's what you want to do. You don't always have to soak the mushrooms. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but I'm soaking my bitter melons anyway. So I'm gonna wash these first and then I'm gonna slice them. All right, whether you want to peel the skin or not, it's completely up to you. I will peel it if I'm going to be pan frying bitter melon, but for soups, I'm not gonna peel it. I'm just gonna wash it and use it as is. It will be pretty bitter. And my butcher's knife. All right, so as I mentioned to those just joining, I'm making the soup design idea is gonna be a bitter melon spring soup. And I've got 2 bitter melons here. I'm gonna use one just to see how it goes and maybe save this one for dinner. And because I don't want it that bitter, I'm gonna be soaking this in water to help relieve some of that bitterness. So that's what you can do to help relieve some of the bitterness of a bitter melon. And so essentially, ends come off. And I'll show you what the bitter melon looks like. Let's do this. So it's got this middle with where the seeds are. Most melons look like this. And what we'll do is use a spoon and just scrape that out because we don't want any of those seeds. However, so just like this, just fine. Yep, and the seeds will come right out, including on the middle. And then what we'll want is just the outside piece, oopsies, the flesh. Oh my God, making a mess. All right, so that's kind of what we want. How clean you want it's completely up to you. For soup, it doesn't really matter. There, right? So this is what the bitter melon looks like on the inside. And for soups and even for frying, I'll slice them quite thin. But for soups, I'm gonna use a bigger chunk. And the reason is so that they're easier to scoop out and the kids aren't stuck trying to not eat the bitter melon. So that's the purpose of having bigger soup melon chunks. All right, so there we go. That's how you clean out the bitter melon so that you can use them for soups or for pan fry. All right, so like I said, I'm gonna use big chunks, about this size, like that. And then what you're gonna do is soak it in water, like this, just to help relieve some of that bitterness and hopefully it comes out. So this is why I'm doing this first. For those who know me, you know I'm very efficient. I don't like wasting time. And so I've already pre-thought about, all right, I gotta do this step first so that everything comes sequentially and I'm saving time. And so I'm gonna soak the bitter melon first right now along with the mushrooms. And because I remembered, I've already set water to blanch my meats. And let me explain the meat today, what I'm using. So melons tend to pair really nicely with pork. You could use chicken, but pork is the primary pair for most melon soups. I'm using pork shoulder today, which is a little more expensive than pork back because it has more meat. And the point is, when this cooks, you can actually take the meat, dip it in soy sauce, and it's fantastic. It's part of your meal. We do that. What I've also added today is a chicken thigh. You could use chicken drumsticks as well. And the point of this is to try to sweeten and offset the bitterness. That's what I'm doing when I'm designing this soup. And so I'm gonna get my blancher pot of water going. Just gonna drop these in and pre-boil or pre-blanch the meats to take out some of the grime, the bone bits, the blood. The chicken, actually, if you look at chicken thigh, look, they tend to be a little bit fatty. Chicken is a fatter meat. And so this is gonna help also boil off some of the fat. That's the whole point of doing this. So let's put this in later as the meats, as the blanching water boils. All right, next is, let's prepare the rest of the ingredients. I'm not going to use the second bitter melon. I'm just gonna use one bitter melon today. Quite cooling, quite bitter. Let's see and taste test, see how that goes before I add in the second one. Melons cook really fast. So today it's not really a long boil. It's probably gonna be a medium boil, probably into an hour. But let's see how it goes, right? Again, I play a lot of things by ear. The other thing, corn. The key neat ingredient that we discovered last week, and we talked about this, is corn silk. This is the stuff here, the corn hair. This stuff actually is super diuretic. It helps dispel water, helps dispel dampness from the body, helps you eliminate all that unwanted wetness inside. So adding this, the corn silk, to your soup is actually a huge benefit. So don't throw them away. If you plan to use a soup that's a little more springy, that's the idea. So what I do is I just rip off the skin like this. I do, because I'm trying to preserve the corn silk. So what you want to do is really just slowly peel the corn like this. Not too rough. And I know a lot of people tend to peel, like, especially Asians, they will peel in Canada the corn and just leave the skin or the stalk at the supermarket as well. And you could do that too, up to you. But what I do is I take it home, because actually what I'm after is the corn silk. It's this piece right here. And I'll show you how, you know what, I also ran out of soup bags. But I do have a replacement. I'm gonna use tea bags and I'll show you how that is. Or you could just drop in the corn silk and fish it out afterwards. That's fine too. All right, so here we go. So this is the corn. It looks like this. It looks kind of funny, but this is the piece that you want to preserve, is this corn silk right here, right, like that. So I'm gonna just save that on my cutting board. Every time I do this, it becomes a wonderful mess. And I'm not a fan of like messy kitchens, but somehow every time I go live, it just becomes so messy. All right, so that's the first corn. And I've shown you this before. I don't really chop my corn. So there we go. I'm just gonna drop this into the soup. There's the first one. And then here's the second one. So I'm gonna take this as well. So you'll just have to pardon me as I do this. So what I'm doing now is I am trying to preserve the corn silk. I know the official name now. It's called corn silk and not corn hair. The corn silk is actually fantastic ingredient for Chinese soups. We use it, oddly enough, in some sweeter soups like zhukjie mao gam, or zhukjie is, oh my god, sugarcane. There's a sugarcane Chinese herbal tea that actually uses corn silk along with dried winter melon. All right, so what I'm gonna do is preserve all this hair and drop it in my soup as well. And then you just fish it out afterwards. But the hair is actually really great for spring. It's perfect. It'll help dispel water from your body, damp heat from your body. So that's what we're making today. We're making a hui sup, that's the term, a hui sup cha, hui sup tong. And it's really to eliminate, because it's spring, it's super humid here as well in Toronto this weekend. There, all right. So what we're gonna do is use this to help dispel some of the dampness and the heat that's in our bodies. I'm feeling it. All right, so as I said, you preserve the corn silk, and what I've done is just have a little bundle here. I usually put in a bigger soup bag, but shame on me, I don't have a big one. So you're gonna watch me stuff it into a little tea bag. These tea bags are great because they are actually, oh crap, they're actually, hold on, I got this. There, it's gonna fit. They're recyclable, they're made of paper. No, it's not really working. See, it's breaking. Okay, this is not gonna work. I'll have to find another idea to do this. But the corn silk essentially is gonna go in the soup. You can drop it in as is and fish it out after, which is fine too. I tend to just put it in a bag because it's cleaner, but hold on, I have something else. All right, my Japanese tea bags. Let's see if this is gonna work. 1 second, I need a napkin. Okay, I'm back. So let's try this again. This is the corn silk. I usually have a bigger soup bag, which I put it in, but I ran out, so I'm sorry. So we're gonna go with the tea bag, which I have lots of. This is so that I can make herbal teas. Oh, this fits. There. And the whole point of doing this so that the corn silk doesn't fly everywhere and I just fish it out afterwards. Oh, there we go. All right, so the corn silk exists in here, which is wonderful. This is going to be part of the herbal soup base. So why don't we build that out while I've done that anyway. So you can watch what I'm gonna use as a herbal soup base. So by design, most spring soups tend to have a lot of beans. Beans, and because it's cooling, I'm going to avoid red dates and melons today. It's going to be more of the cooling herbs that complement melons. So I will show you what I'm going to put in. I'm going to lay them out here. And pardon all the corn silk everywhere because I just couldn't keep it clean. So the first base is we're using dried shiitake mushrooms. That's the first one. The next one I'm going to use are green mung beans. These are great for spring. And so I'm just going to use a spoon, about 2 tablespoons, like this. Maybe 1.5. That's good. And then I'm going to also use dried scallops. So dried scallops actually will give you that extra flavor, that sweetness, to help try to eliminate some of that bitterness that the bitter melon is going to give. So let's put about maybe 10 of these, or maybe, I don't know, 12. A handful. Sorry, see, I tell you, when I make soup recipes, it's really just eyeballing it. The next type of bean are yellow mung beans, and these are also amazing as a diuretic. So very complementary: green beans, yellow beans, red beans, black-eyed beans. All right, let's do 1.5 as well, like that. All right, so this is going to be the herbal soup base for today's bitter melon soup. That's the bitter melon, going with pork, some chicken, carrots, red beets, and beans. So this is going to be the soup base. All right, let's come back to that. So it's quite simple, actually. There's not a lot here. I'm just preparing now the rest of the vegetables. Keep in mind flavor. And so because my children aren't fans of bitter melon, so I'm trying to like mask some of the flavor because usually when I scoop the soup, they don't know what's inside, right? So it's basically just drink the soup and that's it. And so the thinking of the design is that we want some sweeter vegetables, some sweeter flavor profiles to help calm that bitterness. The bitterness is important because the bitterness is actually really the key cooling ingredient in the soup. It is the highlight of the soup, the bitter melon. And so just thinking about vegetables, you could add a fruit like a carrot even. Oh, sorry, an apple, which would be quite interesting. But what I've gone with is a carrot that will help sweeten it as well, and beets. Beets are actually quite sweet and tasty in Chinese soups, and you'd be surprised. They don't soften very well, but they make for part of the meal, which is fantastic. So what I'm gonna do is just peel both the beets and the carrots and chop them, and we'll do it now. 1 second as I wash. I'm gonna wash the carrots. Oh. All right. Oh, so my blanching soup is boiling, so let's blanch the meats first. You can watch me blanch. Here we go. Oopsies, sorry about that. All right, let's drop in the pork bones and the chicken. So I'm using chicken today because, I'm using chicken today because it's gonna help offset some of that, add a bit more sweetness to the soup to try to hide the bitter melon. That's kind of what I'm trying to do. And there is a lot of bones today. Actually, for a family of 4, you could have this portion of meats. But I tend to like add a lot of stuff in my soup. There. So that's gonna blanch. And just let that boil for a little bit. All right. It should be done really quickly though. All right, so let's go back and finish preparing. That's gonna blanch. I don't know, let's watch. See, it's almost done. Okay, I'm just gonna let that sit for like 2 minutes. And then I can peel the carrots. And so for those joining, I'm making a bitter melon spring soup. I think that's probably the simple way to call it. And the key ingredient is the bitter melon. The whole reason I'm doing a bitter melon is because, you can watch me peel, is because it's been super hot and super humid in Toronto, but not hot to the point where it's dying hot, but I feel really heaty on the inside. So I think I'm still running a bit of a cold. So, pretty big pieces. Yeah, for the soup. Up to you how small you want them. So that's about the size I'll do for the soup usually, maybe smaller, but depends. It's gonna be kind of like a medium long boil, so it doesn't need to be that small of the pieces, and I do like big pieces so that I'm not fishing everything out. All right, great. So you'll notice that that's boiling already. Blanching takes about 5 minutes. Really, all you wanna do is just see that there's a bit of foam. Come with me and I'll show you how the blanching works. So what you essentially want to see is that the foam's coming out. That foam, there's chicken fat. There's also those little brown things floating around. That's really the debris from the pork bones as well. And so just let that boil for a bit. Yep, looking good. And that's what we want. So when you're blanching meats for soups, this is really what you want. Oh, it's wonderful. Great. So it's just going to render some of that fat off, some of the chicken fat. It's going to foam for sure. Pork will always foam. It's going to be brown and foamy. And so what you want to do is get rid of that first out of your soup, and then you'll drop that into your soup to let that cook. So at the same time, I'm so efficient. I have my soup pot there. I've already filled it with water, so you don't have to watch me fill it with water. I'm going to start my soup pot. Get that going on high, because as soon as this is done blanching, I've got some of the vegetables done. I can actually start dropping that in and start cooking. So super efficient. See, look, it's only 9:20 already, and we've done most of the prep work. Next are the beets. So the beets are actually going to add a sweetness to try to hide some of that bitter melon. All right, beets are an amazing addition. Chinese people don't usually use beets a lot. However, it's become more common over the last few years, just around using beets in Chinese soups. And beets are really common now in Hong Kong. You can get them fresh. And they actually do make the soup completely red, but that's okay. Like that. And they don't get super, super soft, but you can eat them. And the beets actually add a sweetness to it, a natural sweetness, which is really nice. I'm going to test to see if this will actually help mask that bitter melon that I'm going to be dropping in. So let's see how successful I am at that. Not the easiest thing to peel, so there. There. And again, size up to you. I'll maybe do them because they don't soften that much. Right, I can feel that boiling, so I'm going to turn off my blanching soup for now. Beets don't really soften that much. They actually don't soften well at all in soups. So we're talking about this size for Chinese soups, but up to you. If you're doing a quick boil, I would suggest that you dice everything quite small. All right, so I'm gonna do 2 beets inside my soup. Thank you for your patience as you watch me peel, which is the thing I still don't get. So for those joining today, I'm making a bitter melon. I don't do bitter melon very much because quite frankly, my kids don't like it. So if I make a bitter melon soup, I'm the only one drinking it, right? So today's just really a test to see, let's see how the masked bitter melon soup. And sometimes when I scoop the soups out, I don't show them what's inside. And so it's basically like, just drink it, it's good for you, it tastes good. So trusting that this is going to turn out sweeter than I thought. All right, almost done. So you want to cut off the ends of your beet there. Okay, so these are not bad. The size of the beets I want. I've got 1 bitter melon that's going in today. I'm going to preserve the second bitter melon to do a taste test midway through to see how that goes. All right. So pretty much done with the prep. The vegetables, okay, sorry, I'm gonna wash my hands first, just stay with me. As I rinse all my stuff as well. And get rid of this trash. And then we'll prepare the soup and I'll show you what I'm gonna do there. Okay, so, oh, sorry, let me wash my board. I don't like it so red. actually done preparing. We've got all the ingredients. Let me show you just to recap where we are on the soup. Okay, so recap. I've got my bitter melon soaking in some water here with the umami mushrooms. So theoretically, you can soak the mushrooms. You should soak the mushrooms if you want a little bit longer. And then you can cut off the edges right here, like the stems. But for the purpose of today, I'm not even going to bother. I'm just going to just drop it in like this. So whether you soak the mushrooms or not is completely up to you. The reason I'm soaking the bitter melon though, and this is a trick for people who are using bitter melon, is that it helps dispel some of the bitterness, which is actually the good parts. But for those who are sensitive to over bitterness, you can pre-soak before you use bitter melon, either fried or in soups. Completely up to you. The other thing that we've done and prepared here is, I'll show you, is we've got the carrots, sorry, the carrots, the beets, and corn. That's what else I'm using as the ingredient base. So you can see by the volume of the ingredients right here that it's going to be a pretty big pot. It's probably going to serve about 8 people. And the herbal base. So the soup design of the herbal base is really, I'm using the corn silk, and this is what's left over from the corn. And I've taken the silk and put it in a little tea bag. Mung bean, like green, yellow mung bean, and dried scallops. So I'm avoiding some of the warmer herbs, like red dates. Wolfberries you could put in, but I'm not feeling that the wolfberry is very complimentary today. So what I tend to lean towards is if it's a spring soup, if it's cooling, I'm going to avoid some of the warmer herbs. Dried dates though, dried honey dates you could put in if you want to sweeten that as well. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Let me get that. So dried honey dates is quite neutral. It's not warming, whereas the red dates is actually very warming. The honey dates is really just going to sweeten the flavor. Again, to try to hide the bitter melon taste. Wait 1 second. Let me see if I can find my honey date. It's here somewhere. Oh, there they are. So easy. All right, got my honey dates. So, see, this is what I mean about me just making up soup design as I go along sometimes. But there are some principles to soup design, which I think I'm going to post about. Just so that if you're doing your own soup design, you actually have an idea of how to design a soup and what matches together. So honey dates is actually a great addition to cooling soups too, because honey dates aren't warm. They're just more sweet. Red dates are actually super warm. So that's what you want to try to avoid because it clashes with what I'm trying to do is the cooler soup. All right, so we're more or less ready now to put the soup together. If you look at the time, it's around 9:30 right now. So in terms of prep time, it took me 30 minutes to come to a point where I've got the meat completely blanched, pork and chicken. I've got all my vegetables prepped, and I'm just gonna drop everything in the soup and let it boil for 30 minutes before I put it into the thermal pot. And that will just cook on its own for the remainder of the morning. And then by noon, I'll have a soup ready for lunch. So let's go and do this. Come with me first, as I'm going to do the lazy way. And sorry, cheers here. Almost boiling. Okay. Oh no, it's pretty close. Let's go. So what I'm gonna do is, rather than, you can take, so look at all the foam. This is really kind of gross. So all that foam, the fat, I can already see the chicken fat that's boiling out, and a lot of the debris come out already. So what you could do is just swish this around in the water just to wash it a bit. Some people will take it out, drain, and rinse again in water. That's completely up to you. I have not chopped my chicken. And the reason is because I'm gonna just take this out of the soup and serve it as part of the meal. When you serve it with soy sauce, it's delicious, all right? So I'm just gonna drop that into the soup like this. And then all the pork, I'm using pork shoulder today instead of back. So the shoulders have more meat. Same idea. You take this out, you serve it as part of your dinner. You don't even need that much protein then, right? Like for your dinner, and then that's perfect. My kids love it, especially with soy sauce. Super yummy. And I'll do it. Like I just don't like wasting the meat. That's why I will eat a lot of the vegetables. I will eat, literally this soup is going to eat like a meal. That's the whole point. See, like, look at that, how much meat there is there. And this stuff is super soft after you boil it for a while. So I would suggest, like, oopsies, training your kids to try to eat some of the meat because it is quite delicious. All right, almost done, I promise. So this is me being lazy and just transferring all the blanched meats from the blanching pot directly into the soup pot. Just makes things easier. Some people will take out, they'll do a rinse, especially if it's beef, just to rinse everything off, which is fine too, that's your choice. But what I will do afterwards is I will actually take a oil thing, like an oil scooper, and scoop out any extra oil. All right, so what we're gonna do now is let's drop in all the soup ingredients, and we can watch it this way now. All right, see, this is the thing with like going live, is trying to figure all this stuff out. All right, vegetables going in. So for those just joining, let's see what's going on here. My meats are in, soup's pretty much boiling. And I'm gonna drop in all my vegetables. See, me lazy, I'm just doing the corn in halves. All right, here we go. Oh. Drop in, there we go. I'm using 2.5 liters of soup. Just for those of you who want to know how much I'm using. See, at the end I've got corn silk here anyway. All right, and then I'll drop in the bitter melon on top. So everything can go together pretty much for the soup. There's no order. As long as the water is boiling, you drop in your blanched meats, you drop in your vegetables, and you just let that boil. Like, this is how easy Chinese soup can be. And I know it can be intimidating because a lot of the ingredients, people are like, what is that? That tends to be the herbs. All right, these are the dried shiitake mushrooms, and that's gonna give it a little bit of umami flavor. And again, hopefully to try to mask that bitter melon. It's so bad, but this is what parents do, right? Sometimes in pasta, you try to blend up the vegetables as well. All right, and finally, the herb base. And so the herbs, as I said, is scallops, mung beans, yellow and green. Oh, I forgot the barley. Oh, okay, anyway, let's just drop that in first. The corn silk is on top, like that. Hold on. Where's my barley? Oh. And today I'm just going to use fried barley. I ran out of raw barley. Should have bought that yesterday. But we're just gonna do maybe around like, I don't know, 1.5 to 2 tablespoons, like that. And see how that goes. And basically just mix it around and let that boil. And this is going to boil for 30 minutes on the stovetop. And the whole point of that is to just allow it to cook right through and boil with a bit more heat so that it's a little more cooked. And then I'm gonna drop it into the thermal cooker right there. And so that's it pretty much for the soup preparation. It's so easy. So today we're making a bitter melon pork spring soup. And everything's in the soup right now cooking right there. So time is 9:33. It took me about 30 minutes, slowly actually because I'm talking to you, but it took me 30 minutes from 9 o'clock to 9:30 to prepare all the vegetables. We have corn in there, carrots, red beets, and the bitter melon. And the herbal base is quite simple of dried scallops, beans of your choice. I will leave it to you. Some people like red beans or black-eyed beans. Any beans, barley. Oh, did I I can't remember if I put the dates in. So honey dates. So the soup design is really to keep cooling soup. A cooling soup by design is to help when you have too much yang or you have a yin deficiency, either or. So that's really the point of today's soup. And I'm gonna let that boil for about 30 minutes. Pretty good today. Thank you, whistles. And so, yeah, 30 minutes. Oh, I did, thank you. Oh, you're talking about the honey dates. Okay, great, thank you. I forgot, totally, thank you about that. And so anyway, so the honey dates are in. Hopefully the soup's gonna be sweeter to balance off the bitter melon. I'm going to check on the soup in terms of taste after it boils. And if it's not bitter enough, I think, I might add this, but I'd rather add this at the end than at the beginning, because if I do add it now, then the kids aren't gonna wanna drink the soup. And so that's essentially it. A bitter melon spring soup. I will post it on the whole recipe on the blog. I actually do want to talk about soup design and how that works, and just so that you guys can design your own soups. That's the whole idea, right? Following a recipe is great, but I think there is some joy to designing the herbs you like. Like some people do like the barley bean base. I like barleys and beans because it actually eats like a meal. And so you can add more of that or less. But anyway, thank you for joining. And I'll have a full video, especially with the final product and what it looks like at the end. But did good, 35 minutes for soup prep, and let that boil 30 minutes on the stovetop here. It's gonna go into the thermal pot there for another hour to 2 hours, and then you can drink your soup. Salt if needed. So the one thing I forgot to mention, that if you're soaking bitter melon in water, this will help make it less bitter. Add a little bit of salt, that helps as well. That helps really dispel some of that bitterness, which I forgot. But anyway, but thank you, Amelie, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining me on preparing this soup today. And we'll do something else next week. If you have any suggestions about what soup you're interested for me to prepare, let me know, drop me a message, but ideally conditional. I know in the Australia side of the world, it's actually colder, and you guys are in winter right now, but I probably am gonna do more spring soups, given that it is very humid on this side of the world. All right, thanks guys, and see you later, bye. How do I turn this off? Okay, this is not working.